So Carolyn and I, boy, I tell you, we was caught completely off guard. It's going to change everything. I don't even know what to say about it. But before I get into that, or as I lead into that, this is a vlog, V-L-O-G. It's different than a blog with B-L-O-G. A vlog is it's video. So as you know, Carolyn's been putting a shed together, and she's done 99% of it all by herself. Occasionally she has come up and asked me to do something for it, but not much. One of the things that's caused us so much problems is that we don't have a platform to put it on yet. We gotta get some lumber, we're gonna build a floor. And so she started building it, and everything's so unlevel and everything, and unsquare, that it's caused alignment issues. But once we got those resolved last night, everything started coming back together. And the roof was it was unsquare. One of the things that has me concerned though, is how hot this roof up here is. It's hard to touch. And so we're gonna have our solar panel equipment in here, the charge controller, the inverters. I'm a little worried it's gonna get too hot in here, so Carolyn said, let's paint the roof white. I was just gonna get a white tarp and put over it, but she said, let's paint it white, do it right. And that'll keep it a little bit cooler in here. And the reason this is important is I've learned a lot about our solar panels over the last few days. As you know, I moved them up the hill here, just moved it 10 feet so we could get more sun earlier in the morning. This is night and day difference. This is absolutely incredible. So the other day, Carolyn's son was running the air conditioner in his camper. And when you unplug it, the air conditioner resets. I told him I'll set it, and I didn't tell him what I set it at. I just set it at a temperature. And he said, fine, I'll leave it there. When he wants to run the air conditioner, I switch inverters on him. We have a 1,000-watt inverter. An inverter, this is a modified sine wave. And so it doesn't have clean energy. I've talked about that before. I'm not gonna really cover it again, but it's not 60 hertz is what it is. A little bit more explanation than that, but I'm not gonna get any deeper in that. Then we have pure sine wave inverters. And we have one of each. We have a 1,000-watt and a 2,000-watt modified, and we have a 1,000-watt and a 2,000-watt pure sine wave. It's just we've progressed and improved over the time, and that's why we have so many inverters. But the way I look at it now is if one of the inverters goes down, we have a backup. If the 2,000-watt inverter goes down, we still have the modified. With the modified, the only thing we really can't run with it is Carolyn's son's TV and Xbox. Everything else we can run on it. It's not very good for some equipment like motors on your refrigerator and freezer. It runs a little hotter, so it might burn up quicker. But I don't know. We've had a refrigerator on modified sine wave for years. The refrigerator was inside our truck camper. We traveled all over the country with it. Then we put it in a tiny house, and it's been on modified up until this year. And then we put it on a pure sine wave. It's still running. Actually, we got a freezer. That's why we got pure sine wave. So we just shut off the refrigerator. We're not using it anymore, but it still works. Now, the other thing I was telling you about is the charge controller. Charge controller looks like this. This is not an MPPT charge controller. It's just a regular charge controller. These are the old-fashioned kind. The new ones, the MPPT, which is what's in the camper, is basically an AI, artificial intelligence. What it is it can monitor all kinds of things. How much energy you're using, whether it's charging the battery, whether it's running equipment, how much electricity your solar panels are producing. If solar panels are producing too many volts, it changes the volts into amps. And it's really nice, but it's not necessary. It's nice, but not necessary. You can get one of these. There's no reason to anymore. They're about the same price, actually. When I started hooking up these solar panels, I've done this in the past. About 20 years ago, I had solar panels. But all they had back then was just the regular old charge controllers. They didn't have the MPPTs back then, or if they did, I didn't know about them, or they were really expensive. They didn't even have, the one I had, I actually had two of them. I think they were only like 5 or 10 amps. This one's 60, so is my MPPT. And they were pretty expensive, but they didn't have a monitor on it or anything. It was just a box. Had an LED light on it. That was the excitement of the day, is that LED light which should turn on. So when I was installing these, I had to learn a lot about charge controllers and the improvements in technology since I'd bought one. So I bought this one, not realizing I could do better. So I disconnected this one and just called it a loss. But again, I have a backup. Now what a charge controller does, I think I kind of explained it, but it's basically like a battery charger for your car. You know, it's got the plus and the minus cables, and you plug it into the wall. The only difference between a charge controller and a modern day battery charger is it's taking raw solar power energy, or DC energy, 12 volt energy, and is cleaning it up, figuring out what to do with it, how much it needs to go into the batteries. If you just plugged your solar panels right into the battery, within a couple hours you would burn up your battery, because there's nothing to shut off the solar panels when the battery's charged. It allows the batteries to charge up, and when the battery's charged, it shuts off the solar panels. Turns on the solar panels, shuts them off. As a matter of fact, on the MPPT, this one too, I'm not sure, I've only used this one for a few days, but on the MPPT, it actually has a green light that says, okay, we're charging, and then when the lights are off, it's not charging. So the solar panels feed the charge controller feeds the batteries feed the inverter changes DC electricity into AC electricity and sends it to the house. Now I have 1,000 watts worth of solar panels here. Each one of them is 100 watts, 12 volt system. The panels actually produce 20 volts because you need more volts than what the battery needs. So when you're charging the battery, if you ever look at your car charger, your dashboard, you may see that your voltage is much higher than 12 volts. Even though they call it a 12 volt system, 12 volts means that's about as low as you can let your battery go. It's actually 12.3 volts. You shouldn't let your batteries go any lower than 12.3 volts. That's 50% of the battery. So lead acid batteries are only allowed to discharge 50%. So if you have a 100 amp hour battery, you actually can only use 50 amps out of that, 50 amp hours. So these produce about 50 amps. Each one of these produce about 5. When it was down here, and I didn't have it very organized or very clean or anything, it just laid on the ground. And the reason I lay them on the ground is it is cooler. I've showed this in a video just a few days ago. I have my little laser thermometer out here, and I was showing you how everything was cooler on the ground. And since Carolyn's son is here, and she is building this shed, and she wants to get rid of the old camper where all the components are, we moved them. And we moved them so we get 2 hours more sunlight in the morning. When it's cooler, I told you about this, when the panels are cooler, they're more efficient, they produce more electricity. When it's over 78 degrees outside, they lose efficiencies. Told you all about that a couple of days ago in a video. I'll put a up next box at the end of this video to that video. So I get them up here, and all of a sudden everything is running better. We got it on the tarp. Now the tarp is going to produce more heat. I showed that in the video with my laser thermometer. So I wish I'd had a white tarp, but since we're going to paint the shed, I might just do something silly and just dump some paint on the blue part of the tarp that's exposed. So doing two things to keep it from degrading the tarp, the sun, because the sun will degrade the tarp, and it might reflect some of that sunlight into the panels. Well, I guess three things, and keep it cooler. But this will keep the grass under control, and it won't get twisted up my wires. That was what the big problem was, is everything was getting twisted up, so I needed to do maintenance, because I regularly got to do maintenance. I've talked about this many times. The wires, they're copper wires. Maybe I should change over to aluminum. Of course, it's thicker wiring then. That's the only thing I got left. But I've tried everything else to keep them from turning black. So about once or twice a year, I got to come down here with a Scotch Guard greenie, and I got to clean that up. I was able to thoroughly test these solar panels, the other day, and I laid them all on the ground, face down. I'd lift one up at a time. I checked each one, and I found that there was a couple that weren't doing very well. Of course, we got the broken one, and they had another one that had a loose wire in it. It was only producing 2 amps instead of 5. So now we're getting maximum amount of amperage out of these. So her son ran the air conditioner. For whatever reason, when you unplug as I was saying before, the air conditioner, it resets the air conditioner down to 73 degrees. So I have to unplug his air conditioner, his camper, from the 1,000 watt inverter to the 2,000 watt inverter, because it needs more power than what the 1,000 watt is. Now the reason I don't just keep them hooked up to the 2,000 watt is it uses 2 amps per hour just by itself, the inverter does. Whereas the 1,000 watt, I can't even notice how much it's using. So if you're not using any energy on that 2,000 watt, everything's unplugged and it's just on, you're using 2 amps. So basically, in a 24-hour period, you're using a full battery. Remember I said the battery is 50 amps. So 24 hours, that's basically 50 amps, 48 amps. So we unplug him from the 2000 when he's not using the air conditioner. So I unplug him every day and plug him into the other one back and forth. When that happens, it resets that air conditioner. So the other day, he didn't realize that the air conditioner was set at 73 degrees. Well, that camper gets so stinking hot because it's directly under the sunlight. There's no shading. It never got down to 73. It just kept running and running and running, which was no big deal. The solar panels were keeping up great. Everything was doing fine. I was just very excited how well everything was going. Well, I came down about every hour just to check to make sure that we weren't drawing off the batteries and that I was going to have to run the generator or anything to see what was happening. And the charge controller, the thing that keeps the batteries from overcharging from the solar panels, so it takes all that energy and controls it, froze up. And so when I touched it, it was hot. So it overheated is what I'm guessing. And it was in the camper. So the windows are open, the back door is falling off, so there's plenty of ventilation going into it, but it froze up, it overheated. In order to reset that, you gotta be careful when you reset them. You have to disconnect the solar panels first. Then you disconnect the batteries from the charge controller. And all this is right underneath the charge controller. There's little holes, plus or minus for batteries, plus or minus for solar panels. And it's all charted out right on the front, so you don't have to really think about it too much. So, but you got to do it in that sequence. You cannot have solar panels on the charge controller without the battery. So disconnect the solar panels first, disconnect the battery. So it reset, I plugged the battery back in, plugged the solar panels back in, and it started working again. Well, what I had to do was I got a little fan, and I took the fan off the ventilation that I used to pump hot air into my water tank. So in the wintertime, we'll use that fan for the water tank, and in the summertime, I'm gonna blow that fan onto the charge controller. Now that's taking energy from the system, but the solar panels are keeping up just fine. Remember, 2 amps for the inverter, now we got the fan and the freezer, the TV, the Xbox, and the air conditioner all running off these panels now during the day. It's fantastic. It's just working amazingly well. Well, as you know, I run the well off the generator. Now we have a dual fuel generator up there. It runs off gasoline and propane. I just resolved the problem I've been having with it. It was getting vapor lock on propane, not gasoline, on propane. So what was happening is the propane would get trapped in the cylinder, and as the cylinder cooled down, it would shrink the cylinder, trapping all that propane in there, and you just could not pull that rope. It just tore me up every time. What I discovered is after I shut it down, I pull that rope 5 times and it releases that gas, that propane from the cylinder, and it's easier to start now. But in the meantime, I've broken 2 ropes. So I decided I don't want to use that too much more if I don't have to. So what I decided to do was this little generator up here. I got 2 battery chargers in there. I figured if I need to run the well, I'll run the well off the 2,000 watt inverter, and I'll run this generator. I'll take the 2 battery chargers and the solar panels all at the same time and charge the batteries while that well is running. And it worked great. I didn't have any issues, no problem. Well, today I wanted to do an experiment. So I decided I was just gonna run the well off the batteries and the solar panel. No generator at all, just completely. And I've done it before, but it was always had to be on a really sunny day and no clouds in the sky. Well, today it started charging batteries at 9:30. By 11 o'clock, the battery is completely charged. So at 11 o'clock, I plugged the well into the panels and I let it fill up. And there was a few clouds in the sky. Well, now I have enough batteries. In the past, I didn't have enough batteries. I think the last time I tried this, I had 6, and now I've got 8. I filled up the water tank off the well with the solar panels, no generator. This is like the first time I've ever done that. When I was done filling the well, I unplugged it, of course. I let the fan continue to run on the charge controller because I didn't want it to overheat. And the charge controller was now charging the batteries because it depleted the batteries. And the charge controller is kind of funny about that. So it was at 14.4 volts, but it depleted it down to 12.5 before it allowed the solar panels to start charging or start to send energy. So it sucked a lot of battery energy first. And I understand why it does that, because as soon as you unplug the well, you're going to overload the system. The charge controller is not going to have enough time to shut down the solar panels. So you're going to be sending 35 amps into a system that only needs 8. So when it got down to 12.5 volts, the solar panels were producing 40 amps. That's all it needed, I guess. Then, so when I shut it down, the solar panels had to charge batteries back up, because remember, it sucked that energy down, and it ran about 35 amps for an hour, and the batteries are charged back up. This changes everything. This is going to save us so much gasoline and so much on the generators. In the past, it was just a lot of work. I would have to rearrange everything and fix everything, make sure the sun was perfectly up in the sky, and so it was just inconvenient to do this. So I've actually ran the wire, and I've put it up so I don't run over it with the lawnmower, and I've got it kind of hanging up in the sky right now. But I'm going to modify this. I'm going to actually get some real poles or something and get it higher up in the sky. Right now I just got a stem. I may just do that. I mean, I don't need to spend a lot of money. This seems to work. After being here 3 years, we finally got a system in place where we can be pretty much self-reliant now. Of course, on cloudy days, we probably wouldn't be able to run the well off the solar panels. Like today, let's say the tank was mostly empty. I could probably fill the tank until the batteries were too discharged to do anything, let the batteries charge back up within an hour, do it again. I could do that about 4 times in a day. The biggest thing I got to make sure of is that there is enough electricity in the batteries to run the freezer at night. So this is a game changer. So if you'll click this up next box, take the video where I was talking about these solar panels. So I hope I can inspire you to change your game so you can live your dreams. Thanks for watching.